In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil lurking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannon could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Hello, 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 and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. My name is Ike. This is my channel. And over here, we talk about being better and doing better with a strong emphasis on doing. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a continuation of a conversation we started out last week. Okay? Go ahead and check it out. We talked about don't play with those whom will not work with you. Okay? The basic premise behind that is, hey, people call upon your time and your attention, and they ask you to sacrifice in that manner. Okay, they ask you to sacrifice those things for, let's say, celebration. They're going to party, okay? They call you to party with them, or they're going to wake up with you tomorrow to meet your deadline. Are they going to help you meet your deadline? That is the crux of the issue, is the question you should ask yourself, okay? When navigating these waters, as far as whom to work with and whom to play with. Some of the prescriptions are, shall we say, self-explanatory and obvious, but asking that question, I think, is always a crucial one. So today we're going to move on, continuing with the theme of teams. We're going to talk about that teamwork. You're going to talk about the fact that nobody likes group projects, especially in the when a group is forced upon you, right? We all remember group projects from school, and it doesn't matter. It seems to be a universal thing, regardless of personality, right? The introverts don't like it for their reasons. The extroverts don't like it for their other reasons. The people who like being bossy don't like the fact that other people are calling them bossy in the group. You know, nobody seems to enjoy this thing, but it is an important aspect of getting ish done, right? Am I right there in my my analysis that it seems to be the case that nobody likes quote unquote group projects? Is that your experience, Dr. Thunder?
I certainly don't like them.
Do your students? Have you come across anyone, student or otherwise, that is just like, oh, I like group projects, um,
Well,
or yeah.
so uh, the problem with the group projects is the folks on the team are not all equals.
Hmm.
So what that means is that some folks are going to be doing most of the heavy lifting, and then others will be hardly doing anything, basically wasting time, wasting space, being good dead wood. Um, that whole 80-20 principle, right? So you're going to have probably one person on the team that's really most responsible for the thing going well.
Indeed.
And
Do you think?
yeah,
Do you think
I
there's a
don't want to
remedy? Because
drag. I
you've said it.
I just don't want to be carrying people. I don't want to be carrying people, and then I don't want to
Okay.
carry people, and then everybody gets equal. You know, you know, equal congratulations. Oh, the team works so well. You guys are all so great. And it's not, and it's not because I need the credit. I don't care who gets the credit. I just want it to be what it was actually. So if they could have like a thing where, okay, here's the award ceremony for the group project where, okay, all right, Johnny didn't do a dadgum thing, so he gets the worst teammate award. you know
Hmm.
so if you could go through and do that, maybe I'd feel better about it, but that's not the way it works.
It's not the way it works. It's not the way it works. And you see, I think what you've painted here is a landscape of problems. But shall we say, in other words, this is a landscape of problems. The question now is it worth solving? And I think that it is obvious, but let me ask the obvious question. Do
Hmm.
we need to work in teams? Do we need to work in groups? Right? You know, I think that we asked this question in our previous conversation. Okay, last week, the whole basis was okay. Well, we went evolutionary with it. We said social animal and all that kind of stuff. But let me ask the question again: do we need to solve this problem of the teamwork?
Yeah, I think we do. um you
Okay.
know it still is the case. It still is the case that if you want to go quickly, go by yourself. If you want to go far, you have to take people with you. And there is the issue of legacy, right? So so say you do all this work during your lifetime to set this thing up. Well, it dies when you die unless you set it up in such a way that it can continue, and that requires other people.
100%. Okay, so there is so on the screen there says hierarchy, which is one of the issues you mentioned, which is that some people are that it's not equal, right? And for any kind of
No.
order, there needs to be hierarchy, right? There needs to be hierarchy. There needs to be a kind of a base, a foundation, and then things that build on top of that. And someone has to be on top. Take the pyramid structure, for example, and it turns out that all organizations tend to be pyramids, right? So everything is a pyramid scheme at the end of the day, to the degree to which that it's going to last. And I like what you mentioned about the whole individual versus group thing. You see, it takes individuals to change things, to be innovative, to be dynamic, to be creative, if you will. But then it takes institutions and groups and traditions and all those collective efforts for anything to last, right? So you can just
No.
be this rebel prophet out there prophesizing your stuff and being a visionary. But if you don't have some kind of institution, if you don't leave some kind of mark, if you don't have some disciples, if you will,
Yeah.
things could just peter out, right? So, hence, we have established that it is worth solving the problem. So, we're going to solve the problem by looking at by the way the problem manifests itself in a number of ways. There's a communications aspect for sure. Okay, communications, personality, hierarchy, and all those kinds of things are in this one little lump, if you will. And then after that, we'll look at some other aspects of the problem, okay, which has to do with the common vision. Okay, this is what the title says. We promised that we're going to show them. How to have a common vision. And by the way, the thumbnail was you saw the thumbnail, right, Dr. Thunder? What did you think of the thumbnail?
Uh, I I didn't know who was looking at me. It's a lot of
A lot of
different people
eyes.
looking at me.
A lot of
Yeah.
different people look at you, just one eye only, too. So it was interesting. I found the thumbnail a little disconcerting, but okay, so there's the common vision thing, so I put it up there. But part of the reason I put it there is because there's something about thumbnails in terms of getting attraction, getting
Yeah.
people to click. That says, if you show eyes and if you show someone's face, right? So put a face there and show, their eyes. Like, okay, well, how about I just put a bunch of eyes, right? Did it work? Did it work? Let me know, people, if
Well,
it, if it worked.
we'll see. We'll see.
Well, we shall see. We shall see. So let's get into the communications aspect. You see, George Bernard Shaw has a quote, or this quote is saying something, which is that one of the biggest problems with communication is the illusion that it has occurred. Right? Now, it's not something too crazy. Just basically saying, hey, I have a feeling in me, okay? And perhaps it's something as solid as a particular set of outcomes that I may want. And then I put some words out there and I tell Dr. Thunder, go work on X, right? And it'll be foolish of me to really think that my vision has been transmitted to Dr. Thunder simply because I said, go work on X, right?
Uh,
So let me give you an example, Dr. Thunder, and let me tell you, let me see what you think about this. So obviously there's differences in people's personality because that communication thing and the personality immediately arises. You mentioned that people are not equal, okay? But even people that are, shall we say, competent, okay, they've crossed a certain threshold of competence, intelligence, know-how. They're high achievers. Okay, so let's take two examples. Okay, I take Dr. Thunder on one hand, and I take another one of my interlocutors, Dr. K Polymath. Okay, if I tell Dr. Thunder, yeah, you're gonna work on this. So go work on X. Versus if I tell Dr. K Polymath. Again, these people, neither of them are slackers, neither of them is dumb, but there's a difference in personality here, which I've observed over time, and I know that this is gonna be the outcome. If I want a list or a concise thing to be the result, I don't necessarily have to tell Dr. Thunder that. I think Dr. Thunder is probably gonna narrow things down. If I say, Dr. Thunder, go work on X, I'm going to get X being narrowed down. If I just tell Dr. K Polymath, go work on X, he's going to give me a crazy labyrinth. Unless I tell him, okay? Unless I tell K Polymath, I want you to narrow it down like this, he's going to give me a crazy labyrinth of possibilities, okay? Layered on top of layered. It's just a difference in terms of how people think. So there
right.
is that whole thing about communicating, whether or not it's a question. It's not just a question of competence and IQ or this or that. I just named two people whom are fairly competent in their own right, overachievers, if you will. But different things are going to happen if I just tell them go work on X. I don't know. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of understanding what you have. It's kind of a survey of personalities. There's a reason that those personality tests, are such sort of mainstays and regularly referenced uh, tutorials or whatever. Uh, and what is it? Uh, multiple test, multiple question exams. That they make you take. I mean, I can't tell you how many of those I've taken. Coming into different positions, a couple different churches had me do that. I think I did it when I think I might have done that when I first started at Ohio State. And I don't think it was a required thing, but it's just, there's a reason for that. And that is knowing more about the people that work for you is going to help you to be able to tell them how to do a job and even who to tell to do a job.
So that is an important aspect here of solving the teamwork problem. Because again, remember, this is the premise. People don't like group projects. However, we do need to work in groups. What do? We can't just abandon, okay, the thing. Okay, we cannot abandon the thing. We've said want to go far and so on and so forth, right? So
Mhm.
there is this problem of communication which arises, and personality immediately becomes something that appears in front of us. So I, for example, do personality tests for my employees. I didn't start doing that just out of the blue. Okay. Well, actually, this is a K Polymath's idea. And it turned out that it worked pretty well. He's heavy on that personality stuff. Okay, but I've learned a lot. Okay, and also in terms of what I expected a certain kind of personality to be good at has not turned out to be. There's certain counterintuitive things when you think internally versus when you see it work out externally. Okay, so there's some people whom are, let's just use the word intuitive. Another word on the big five, they call it open. MBTI calls it intuitive. And before Dr. Thunder comes for me, you know what I mean by open, right? So it's not just it's not open minded. It's more intuitive. Let's just put it that way. Someone who thinks
uh,
very good.
willing, yeah, and willing to access. I'm sorry, willing to process the information
Willing to
and go
process the
where it
information
leads.
on the yeah, on a fundamental level too, which is an
Mm,
important part of that intuitive
right,
thing. It's not just
right.
they're not just jumping on top. They look at things in an intuitive way, which is the broad map. Not so much details, but what's the shape of something? How does it relate to that other shape over there and that other shape and that other shape? Okay, so
Yeah.
here's the thing: intuitives are not going to be your best, people in terms of technical proficiency. Okay, they're not going to be your best technicians. And Einstein, for example, okay, who was more like an intuitive kind of guy, a lot of people complained about his papers when he first wrote it. They were like, why did you say all that? Why didn't you just write these equations over here? Meanwhile, Einstein is trying to read, he's trying to grok the idea. And again, Einstein's idea, that's why he did, thought experiments. He would sit and think. It's like, hey, isn't it interesting that being pulled down by gravity is similar to being pulled up by an elevator? Right? Those kinds of things would then lead him to things such as the equivalence principle, which at the end of the day leads to space time being curved. Okay. But it's all in his head, if you will. Now, why do I say that? I have an intuitive engineer and I have more of a sensor engineer. Okay. The sensor engineer, you tell him this is how the intuitives tend to mess things up a little bit. Okay, they're your they're that smart dumb guy, right? In the sense
Mm,
that I'm like that too. I'm
right,
not
right.
going. So I'm going. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
we
not
know
going
you're not calling anyone names.
I'm the intuitive type. I'll go ahead and I will start things. I would think deeply about things. I would kind of maneuver big objects mentally, right?
You know.
But sit down and create a perfect spreadsheet, like you know, there's not a lot of patience in me for that. So I now know the kinds of tasks to give the intuitive person. Okay, I know their path in terms of where they're probably going to end up, which is probably going to be like project management, probably going to be like in coming up with certain kinds of ideas. But the sensor person, they're going to be, once I show them how a drawing should look, they're going to nail it every time. The intuitive is probably going to try to do some weird crap every once in a while, and they'll fall flat on their face, so on and so forth. But, anyways, personality tests, use it to the degree to which you can. Okay, now if we talk about group projects in school, you're not going to be, those people are hoisted upon you, right? But if you can at least go in with the understanding that there are different personalities and you're going to be different outcomes that you can expect. And I just gave that simple example of, hey, if I say, hey, Dr. Thunder, work on X, I'm going to get one outcome. If I say, hey, K Polymath, work on X, I'm going to get another outcome. And I think even you, Dr. Thunder, understand. And we didn't talk about this before, but you know exactly what I mean. You know what K Polymath is going to do. And it's not
Oh
because
yeah,
he's dumb.
absolutely, absolutely. I do.
Okay, so that's the communications aspect of things. Okay, now there is another aspect which is very important here, which is the common vision. How do you do this, Dr. Thunder? Before we kind of break it, before we get into it in a more technical sense, I'm sure the you've been tasked, okay, with having to lead people down a particular path, okay? Either whether you're recruiting people into your institution or you're trying to lead your group down a particular path. And this is about motivation, drive, vision, okay? And what are the kinds of problems you've encountered in doing that? Does it vary in terms of task that is going on? Do some tasks require more vision than others? Blah blah blah. You take it where you want, but how does collective vision and the problem that arises from such get handled in your world, sir?
Yeah, this is a really challenging problem, um, because uh, okay, so in a perfect world, you have hand selected all the people that are your subordinates. But that's not the world we live in, is it really? Um, Often is the case, even when you have hand selected someone, they come with certain baggage, and you kind of have to deal with the baggage. Um, I work with a lot of creatives, and there's certain aspects of creatives that are very appealing to me. Um, Coming up with ideas is never an issue. Uh, in fact, I don't ever feel like I have to always be the ideas person. There's a lot of ideas, but making them comply with, okay, this is the deadline. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. Stop thinking of more ideas. That part is done. Now we have to walk out this thing that we said that we were going to do. Trying to get folks on that path often can be more challenging, right? Um, and I think I have said in the past that my natural tendency is as an A leader, and an A leader is more of an authoritarian. An A leader, that leadership style is more efficient, right? So I have to understand and know all of the stuff that's happening and be able to tell people with detail and precision, this is what it is that I want you to do. Now go do it, right? And I have converted myself more into more of a B leader because I'm around creatives so often that uh, if I'm too much of an authoritarian, that's not going to work. Too many people have, they get their feelings hurt, and they think that stuff is personal that is not personal. I just have a particular objective, and this stuff needs to get done. And we're all under the gun, but they're going to be looking at me if the stuff isn't done correctly, not at them. So the authoritarian thing can sometimes not work out, with creatives as much. But some folks, they appreciate, they would prefer that kind of style of leadership. Matter of fact, me myself, I'm actually cool with that kind of leadership. My dad was very much that way. I mean, he was like, do this, stop asking me questions, get it done. Right. And so I'm okay with that. But other folks that maybe have my, the kind of gifting that I have, they don't tend to be okay with that kind of leadership style. So that's an issue. As far as like sharing a vision, I said this on Case Closed, and I am borrowing from Pastor Joel Brooks, who I borrow from frequently. Um, uh, there are scholars and visionaries, right? And scholars seem to be impressed with their ability to confuse you. Like they know they know something that nobody else knows, and that's sort of their crown jewel. That's the thing that they can point to. And I'm not
Mhm.
criticizing scholarship because it's very necessary and important, but scholarship doesn't usually carry uh, carry with it uh, strong marketing.
Yeah, the
It's
scholar doesn't have disciples. The scholar is not a prophet with. It's not going to lead a movement. It's not going to move a society. It's not going to even write a
no,
constitution. Even.
that's right. I mean, it may find an unusual way to unpack all of that stuff that you just said, uh, but but no, it's the marketing is pretty weak with scholarship. However, a visionary is going to take something that you understand to explain to you something that you don't understand. And
Mhm.
by definition, a visionary can't be quite so granular
Mhm.
with the way that they move because nobody's going to understand them. I mean, you
Mhm.
can't you. Uh, so a strong visionary is going to be careful with the words that they use, um, for clarity purposes, but also because they don't want to use words that not everybody understands what you're saying. Even Is it,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, so a visionary has that sort of problem, but then also a visionary tends to see things that nobody else can see, and so it can kind of be a lonely kind of thing. And then you're lonely, but then you're also the person that has to get all of these other people to get in line and walk behind you.
Can you answer Leroy's question? That's typically my job, right? But
Uh, I'm not underst. I don't understand the question. What is the
okay, what's
topic
the okay?
towards?
Okay, we need to work in groups, right? Okay, I'm interpreting his question.
Okay, I get it. Right.
We need to work in groups, okay? We don't like working in groups. Working in groups has a whole bunch of problems. One of the problems is a communication problem. Another one is the common vision problem. How do you get people
Mm,
together, given the fact that there's different personalities and such and such and such, and give them a vision, give them a guiding light, give them a path to follow? One of the things here that Dr. Thunder just mentioned is the that a visionary can have a broad base, okay, and that you want to try to copy the visionary rather than copy the scholar. That to be a leader that's going to have a broad base and lead people in the common direction, you're going to need to use low resolution, not granular and tiny little bits of information. Think Jordan Peterson, for example. Think stories, right? And imagery, okay? Think archetypes. That Jordan Peterson is that kind of visionary type. And you see, the scholars don't are always upset with him. I listened to him talk to Lawrence Krauss recently. For those who don't know who Lawrence Krauss is, smart guy, physicist type. Okay, and not just physicist. He's actually a smart physicist, not just one of all these other guys that like to write books, right? But a smart physicist. Now, Lawrence Krauss is not as intuitive, as visionary, okay, as Mr. Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, in terms of if you want to know what intuitive is in terms of public intellectual, just think Jordan Peterson. He holds that category very well. That kind of guy that's just always just everything is always fundamental. There is no simple thing. You ask him about a fruit, he starts telling you about, the rescuing your father from the belly of the whale, and how it says in Ecclesiastes this, and how is this and that, and evolutionary psychology. It's like, dude, do you want some apples or do you want oranges? Like, what's going on? So, an example of this difference, okay, and then we'll get back on the path was, you see, Jordan Peterson was talking about he says if an idea is deep enough, it's a religious idea, and it was saying that it is a question of definition. And then Lawrence Krauss was trying to pin him down, like, what do you mean by that? It was like, well, the awe that you feel. And then he represented this awe, or he related the awe that you feel with the prey predator response. So when you see that prey, okay, your hair stands on end. I'm sorry, the predator. Sorry. You see a predator, your hair stands on end. You've come in contact with it, if you will. It's the same thing as when you look up at the stars, says Jordan Peterson. And that is the same kind of a awe that you. And then Lawrence Krauss was like, but Jordan, he asked Jordan Peterson, like, well, why is that? What do you mean? And he was like, well, because the stars, the cosmos is gonna swallow you up just like the prey. And then rather than Lawrence Krauss going with that imagery, he started getting all granular with it. It's like, oh, no, I'm not gonna get swallowed up by the whatever. It's you may see where Jordan Peterson is coming from, right?
Oh yeah.
And you
Yep.
know from an experiential point of view that if you look at the star and you have that awe, it's the same sense of anxiety is mixed in there with the same thing you feel when you see the prey. And there's not, or the predator, and it's not very different. When you've
No.
met that kind of the extreme, the finality of things, which is the same representation as looking at the stars or looking at a tiger about to eat you, right? But you see, and that's why Jordan Peterson is a visionary. He can have the broad base, he can relate to people. But people like Lawrence Krauss are like, no, that's not precise enough. I don't like the fact that you're saying these things, Jordan. Right? Are you trying to? Because anyways, they have their worries, the scholar types. But anyways, if we get back to the point, what you have said so far, right, is in order to guide people together, you need to be more like the visionary than the scholar. You need to be
Yep.
paint broad pictures, think story, think imagery, okay, rather than all this kind of technocratic stuff. You mentioned earlier that your leadership style is type A. I was going to ask you about the delegation because one thing I'm that way too. But I always look for some lieutenants out there whom can
Yeah.
do the type B stuff and the schmoozing. Do you do the same thing? That is a good thing for
Well,
people to be able to do, right?
well, what I was saying is, um, though I am more naturally a type A, I have learned how to become a B. So, in my usual, and it's different. It depends on the setting, but my usual leadership style these days is more as a B leader. Um, I do a good job of delegating.
Mhm.
I delegate certain things. I understand how to set up a hierarchy. I could probably delegate more stuff. There are certain things that I know that these are the really critically important things that I need to be focusing on. And I've learned how to clear my desk, as it were, of all of this stuff that is not stuff that I need to take care of. So I will give that stuff to other folks. Also, I see my role as to find ways to say yes, as opposed to being sort of the gatekeeper kind of a thing where I'm basically going to tell most everybody no. Now, I may argue that hearing no frequently may actually be a good thing as far as the sort of the psyche, the psychology of the person. If they're going to go far, they're going to hear a lot of no's for them to be able to figure out how to navigate around those no's. But as far as my leadership style goes, I'm more about saying yes. So I just try to say yes to everything as much as possible.
Mhm.
Now, some stuff, obviously you can't say yes to. And to that point, I think I might have said this on this show before. There are no, this whole thing about there being no stupid questions. Um, uh, I think there are some stupid questions actually, but more than that, if there aren't stupid questions, there certainly are stupid people. Um, so there is that. Yeah. So you don't, and there's not really much you can do with someone that just doesn't have enough, you know, just knowledge of themselves and of their surroundings to understand when is the appropriate time to ask a certain kind of question, or when is the question or what it is that they want to do actually appropriate to bring up in a particular context. And I was talking to someone earlier today um, about this whole timing. Goodness, the whole timing issue, timing in politics, right? And where I have resisted for much of my professional life playing politics, I have finally embraced and understand that timing and politics are probably the most profitable games to play if you're going to play any games at all. Um, Now, I think you can do it in a way that doesn't sort of rob your soul and make you not be able to sleep at night. But in the past, I used to think, hey, if the idea is the best idea, if I'm bringing the best people, then that's going to be good enough. And in fact, most of the time, it's not good enough. The timing is actually more important than the quality of the ideas or the people that you bring.
When it comes to timing, I'm going to even broaden it out, and I'm going to talk about something that has to do with phases of what you're doing. Because this point that we're on, which we're probably going to linger on for the longest, is the common vision. That's why it is titled that. Okay. The entire project here is how to work with teams. And there are many issues associated with this. There's a reason why people don't like group projects. Okay. So that already gives you the necessity of why we're having this conversation, or gives you some insight into the necessity of having it. And it's a problem that needs to be solved because we do need to work in teams. The vision problem, though, the common vision, guiding people together in a common, having that common motivation. Okay. Now, what kind of project are you embarking on in terms of the phase is important? Let me put it this way. Elon Musk and Peter Thiel starting PayPal together. Okay. That's one kind of a team. Or shall we say Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak? In other words, the beginning, I'm going to call this the visionary and the barbarians. Okay. I'm about, let's say 75% visionary, 25% barbarian. But all the silly word people use for it today is entrepreneur, right? But since everybody's a freaking entrepreneur, I don't want to use that word, right? The point is, I'll use something more visceral, something that we can understand, which is barbarian. The person who is going to go out there and conquer the new territory, go out there to the uncharted lands, is most comfortable where things are uncertain, blah, blah, blah. And the visionary and the barbarian, sometimes kind of the same person, but more or less, right? And they roll together. So in the Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak thing, Steve Jobs more of the visionary, and Wozniak was the barbarian. The barbarian's a workhorse, and they're down to go into the uncharted territory. Like, oh, you want to start a company in the garage? Well, sure, let's do it. I got great programming skills, and then Steve Jobs can spin the web or do whatever these visionaries do, right? In that kind of a stage of development of a project, there typically is not a big problem with common vision. Okay? It is not a problem. If we go all the way now to Apple at its current stage, where you're now hiring administrators to administer something that was built a long time ago by visionaries and barbarians, it's a different kind of spiel you got to tell. This goes back to personality thing. Okay. So as not to overcomplicate things, we're going to take it slowly. All I've said so far is that there are different kinds of projects in terms of phase. Okay. That in the beginning, you have visionaries and barbarians starting stuff. And if you are in a beginning phase of something, choosing the right type of person is very important. In other words, if you think you're starting something, okay? And you think you're gonna find some administrator type, some guy who doesn't necessarily believe in barbarian stuff or new stuff, but is gonna come in with his Harvard degree and say, well, I deserve X, Y, and Z because of my degree, rather than, oh, well, I better pick up my shovel and start digging. I guess we're gonna sink or swim together. We're gonna either get it done or we're gonna fail together, that kind of a thing. That, in other words, in the beginning phases of thing, the person whom you choose is like 100% the whole motivation vision thing. It's not a question of, oh, I'm going to bring this person in into my new fresh boat that I'm just building and then try to convince them, okay, or try to do my visionary web spinning thing. To no, 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 no. The point is, you need to choose barbarians when you are in the beginning. Okay, does that
And
make sense,
often
Dr. Thunder?
barbarians
Or
will
am I?
not last.
Go ahead with that. Go ahead with that thought, because
Yeah,
that's why there's a whole phase to the thing, right? Go ahead.
right. Barbarians often, this is something that you find in church planting. Okay, now maybe maybe not on this program, but maybe at one point in time I'll suggest that we don't really need any more churches, but anyhow, I'll table that. But in church planting, you have the people that sort of go to the area, the sort of surveyors, right? You have the people that are the boots on the ground that are actually recruiting the people from the community to come to the church. You have the people that, when you're under, say, 200 or 300 members, they're the most happy. As the church gets bigger than that, which I might argue that it probably shouldn't get bigger than that. But as it gets bigger than that, then those people start to feel a certain way, and they want to go and start something else now.
Yep.
And so some folks are not going to be with you for the long haul, and to try to keep them and to try to make a bunch of adjustments and changes to what it is that your plans are to try to retain certain folks at one point and at one level will be a mistake.
That is
because they're not going to stay with you
true.
anyway.
I just used the example of PayPal. Okay, there's a group called the PayPal Mafia. Okay, Elon Musk is probably the most popular of them. Peter Thiel is probably the next popular. And then there's like 4 other guys. Okay. This group came together. These are barbarians, right? Barbarians and visionaries. They come together and they start PayPal. Okay. They have since then started, like, each of them 3 other billion-dollar companies, right? It would have been a mistake to try to keep them at PayPal. Like, no. Okay.
Yep.
They came for the visionary barbarian time, and that's what they do. They do visionary barbarian stuff. What's the point of this? Understand the phase of the project that you're in and the type of people that you need to bring in with you. Okay. Now, if we continue down the line, okay, there's going to be the employee number 1, employee number 2, employee number 3. These are going to be your builders, I call them. Let's say your first engineer, your first accountant, your first salesperson, right? These are not necessarily barbarians themselves, but they have to, when you're recruiting these types of people to your team, because we've taken this vision thing of how to have a common vision, and we've couched it in the recruiting thing, which is, rather than try to convince people of vision, a big part of vision is a priority, has to be done in the forefront, has to do with having the right people there, because you're not going to just, you're not that good. You're not going to just convince anybody off the street. So then it's about the phase. If I'm going to start certain things, I'm not going to go to everybody, right? I have this risky endeavor that I'm trying to do. I'm not going to go to everybody. That's stupid. It's not for everybody. Okay, now I want employee number one. Okay, these are people whom are not barbarians and visionaries, but they like the idea. They are in awe of the barbarian and visionary stuff. They respect the founding fathers, if you will, right? So that these are your first builders. And when you get to that point, then you have to know the types of people to recruit. I don't know if you've had any kinds of experience doing this kind of a thing. Maybe it was a band, maybe you're starting some kind of a new project. You and some other barbarian have gotten to a particular point, and then now you got to bring in the first fresh blood. Employee number one versus employee number 100 is a different type of person, is it not? Or am I blowing smoke here?
No, it's absolutely the case. And the thing is there's a sort of learning curve with the newer people that you bring in that doesn't exist with the originals, as it were. And so you can't sort of assume that they kind of already get it, already understand what's going on. And so you have to spend that sort of honeymoon period, as it were, really kind of holding their hand and babysitting to make sure that they're sort of getting it, and getting acclimated. Sometimes, like for me, because I tend to be, I can move very quickly, and it can be confusing to folks. So I have to so I've learned how to, if I'm going to move quickly, then I will do it in conjunction with some sort of plan. So there's like documentation on what it is that I'm doing, so that if I'm not communicating certain things, they can at least look at, it's like, okay, I have a GPS in my car, you have a GPS in your car. I drive the speed I drive. I don't want to have to be waiting for you to get what's that, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to give you the same address. You're going to go to the same place I'm going. If it takes you a little bit longer, I don't care. But this is where we're going, right? And okay, but I have a book called How to Improvise Over Chord Changes, published on Hal Leonard. Hal Leonard is the largest publisher of music, sheet music and books and educational materials, in the world. There was a short list of publishers that I was looking at. Hal Leonard was the one that I wanted, and it worked out. But in starting the process of getting this book together, I decided that I could either wait another 10 years or something before I had enough time to actually complete it myself, or I could use some folks that had already told me that they were interested in helping me. So I had the right people in the beginning, but then one of the people that was there from the beginning moved to New York. And it was the right thing for him to move to New York. Now he's one of my former students. He plays with Lady Gaga and Tony Bennett, and he's doing all kinds of crazy stuff. He's a great player. His name is Steve Cortica. And so, but I needed someone to sort of do what it was that he was doing. And so I had another guy that had just come to town, and he was working at the same institution because of some movement with some faculty members and stuff. His name is Chris Johnson, and he's a wizard at some of the sort of the way that the thing looks. The sort of what do they call that, engraving? So he's a real wizard at a lot of that kind of stuff. Now the thing is that he wasn't there from the beginning, so there's like a gap. So he didn't understand the backstory of certain things, and sometimes I had to sort of stop myself and remind myself that, wait a minute, this guy, he doesn't remember the stuff from the beginning of this project because he wasn't around, you know. But then that was also a positive thing because I could be assuming certain things to be positives for what it is that I wanted to do because no one else had argued with me about it, and they were just ready to just put it into effect. And he was able to point some things out that ended up being more effective, much more effective than what our initial plan was. So I think there's pluses to that, but you can't try to keep the same folks around because it would be totally ridiculous. We tried to initially. I tried to keep the Steve involved in the thing, but it was just a lot of remote meetings, and it just it just turned out to kind of start slowing down. We didn't have the same sort of technology that we have now to make the sort of online virtual meeting more smooth and effective. So, anyhow,
Yeah, two things come to mind there when you mentioned the first one of you having your assumptions checked by somebody whom does not share the same background narrative and therefore blind spots, right, as you,
right,
because they were not there from
right,
the beginning. And then on the other hand, too, there is the you being able to clean up the story as you go along so that when new people come in, things seem a little bit more streamlined and, shall we say, they didn't see the chaos of how you came up with the solutions. They just see a solution, right?
right.
They're like, this is how we do this and this and this. And they're like, oh,
Mhm.
so employee number one important attribute of him that is similar to the barbarian is that they need to be okay with a little bit of chaos, more chaos than would be expected, than employee number 100. You see, because employee number 100 is going to come into your company after you have the nice little logo and the branding. And this doesn't just have to be a company, okay? This could be a government, this could be your little communist commune or cult or whatever it is, okay? Or writing a book, whatever it may be. There are these phases to things whereby in the beginning, things are tumultuous, things are not clear, and you need that barbarian spirit, you need that visionary spirit, someone who's going to go out there into the wilderness, plant a new church, start something new, new enterprise, uncharted territory. These are different types of people. You cannot just bring anybody off the street and say, hey, here's my vision. No, you have to select a certain particular type. And then you're going to build up to a certain place, and you're going to allow certain barbarians to go move on, okay? Because that's what they do. They need to move on. They need to find some new territory to conquer. And then you got to bring in employee number one. Employee number one is going to be somebody whom is more okay with something a little shaky than the guy whom is looking to go, well, I have my Harvard MBA. I'm going to go work for Deloitte because they're the top accounting company, right? That's a different type of person altogether. Okay. And you can't expect that kind of bring in that type of guy and think that your company's gonna continue to grow. It's gonna collapse. Okay. So that's the employee number one type people, the builders. Here is where things start to go downhill. Okay. Because we all know the story of what I'm saying, right? We know the story of, hey, Genghis Khan comes in and he does his thing. 2 generations later, everyone's soft, right? It's the
Yep.
same story I'm saying. It's the
Yep.
same kind of arc, whether it's a conquest of a territory or building of a company, right? There is something that you then need to do when we get to this point now where you have your visionaries and then you have your employee number one and it's all about selecting people. Then you're going to start running into the problem of how to keep people in line now, because now you're going to recruit from the general public, from the Harvard MBA, whom just expect stuff, right? They just think that, okay, well, I get this and this because I did, box checkers. They've checked these boxes and now they expect these things. They're not like, oh, well, I should go conquer it myself or respect the people who conquered it and are willing to be employee number one. No. So the thing that keeps these people going, okay, is your Mr. Steve Jobs type spinning the web, okay, and telling the story. You know, If it's a country, it's your flag, your national anthem, your patriotism, your
Yeah.
putting your heart. It's all that stuff. That's what keeps the people in line. So your marketing, your branding has to be on point. This is what is going to help you recruit that third layer of people whom are not barbarians or visionaries. Okay. And here's the problem. Here's one problem that I that if you're a barbarian out there, you need to notice, you need to note this. You're gonna need this third layer of people. Don't expect them to understand you. Don't expect to understand them. Okay? Don't
Mm.
they're like a totally different breed. Okay? Again, you're a visionary. You bring in a few barbarians. You guys are kind of on the same boat. Employee number one is kind of also on the same boat. He understands, he respects the whole conquest thing. But when you start getting into the administrators, people who are going to now administer what you've established, it's a totally different ball game. The way I like to, another way that people talk about this is that at this point, as a barbarian, you're going to be working on the business as opposed to working for the business. Because when you're starting as a barbarian, you're just you're like an employee. You're just working for the business. You're working for the enterprise. But then at some point, you're going to start working on it, which is building systems and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so don't don't think that these people, administrator types, are barbarians, but they need to be constantly fed the BS, the propaganda, the flag, and the country, maybe country music and God country and apple pie and whatever else, whatever it is that keeps them going, and NASCAR, whatever it is, right? They need
Mm.
that stuff because
The
they're
the ba-
not
the ba-
natural. Yeah,
the baptism in Jesus' name. Mm.
whatever it is, bro. Whatever it is that's going to
That,
keep them going because they're not
that
naturally. Because look, the barbarian by definition, that's a small percentage of the population. Okay, okay.
that might be a little too granular for some folks. Some folks don't know about the the baptism in Jesus' name. I don't
The
know about that.
baptism in Jesus. But anyways, again, that's why I wanted to slow down at this point, and we're probably not going to move on past this point for this show. Maybe the next time we can talk about some other issues that have to do with bringing people together and working as a team. But this vision problem, and I've introduced this idea of the phases of the project. We're now at that phase, okay, where you need to bring new blood in, and this blood is not barbarian blood. Don't expect them to work weekends. Don't expect them to work 16-hour days. No, they want their lunch break. Okay, don't. You might be disgusted with them, okay, as a barbarian type, but it's okay. This is the majority of the population. They're not you. It's fine. I'm talking to myself now. This is my self therapy session, okay? It's fine that people are like that, and you will need them to run the system that you, visionary, and then employee number one types have created, okay? Any thoughts about this whole marketing, branding, bringing in these new people, and the fact that they are not barbarians and they actually do need the BS, if you will.
Yeah, it's the civilized folks. You bring in this, civility.
Yes.
uh, so okay, so first I have to say, um, what's going on with the super chats? Then
Yeah. What's up with that?
non-existent, pretty thin. What's up with that? I have to change. We have to turn this into an O'Shea stream. We start
Yeah,
telling folks.
Leroy. Sure, do
We
comment a
start.
lot. You don't. Yeah, yeah, you could put a nickel something behind those comments. Yeah.
That's right. I don't let. I as a general rule, I don't listen to anyone's comments that isn't attached to a super chat. Anyhow, uh, yeah, the bringing in the civilized folks, you know, um, the educated folks, and the folks that need to sort of be constantly kind of reminded of the story. That's that just means that your company's successful. All right, there we go. We got some super chats. Somebody's making it happen. Gail. All right, and let's see here. Gail says the super chat button works. Everyone, try it. That's right. See, and then also, Don McKee, 90, Gary, Indiana, coming through. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, we could go through here and do a roll call. We go back through the records. I'll say, I wonder when's the last time Polymath put something in there. I wonder when the last time. Yeah. Yeah. Then it really would be a little bit like church planting. Anyhow. Sorry. But yeah, I mean that's that just means that your company is becoming successful. Kind of getting over that first couple hurdles. It just means that you've kind of gotten to the place where now you just have to try to not become complacent. And you're still trying to make changes and make moves, but you have to make them differently. You can't just run that direction. You have to, as in run a particular direction, like, you're in a group of black people. And if you just start running, other people will just start running. But you can't assume that will be the case at this stage that you're talking about. One person that, I admire quite a bit, someone that I've kind of modeled my musicianship and a lot of other aspects of my, in a sense of spirituality and stuff, John Coltrane. And if you compare John Coltrane and Sonny Stitt, those were my two probably biggest influences. And so Sonny Stitt, I mean, both of them were ridiculous musicians. Sonny Stitt was, his approach to this thing, he perfected a particular language, and he pretty much stayed with that same language his entire career. He also wasn't really a good band leader. He wasn't really a great band leader because he never really had a band. Like, he would go to places and play with whoever, but because he didn't have to sort of drag a band around, he's actually the most recorded jazz artist of all time with recordings in his own name. It's not even close. He kills everybody. It's totally ridiculous. So that's an indication of going quickly, but, not having like a sort of band sort of legacy that you left behind because you spent that time kind of cultivating the same guys. Whereas Coltrane, both in his sort of constantly reinventing himself, he went through several periods where he sounded totally different. It was like a butterfly emerging, making a metamorphosis into another creature and then another creature. What is it, that illustration of what is it, the frog turning into a reptile, turning into a bird, turning into a whatever. It was this kind of thing, quite amazing, astounding, totally changed in every way. But he was a great band leader. So he had his classic quartet in particular, and they did a bunch of records with that band. he, yeah, he was the sort of consummate band leader in his leadership style and his willingness to sort of share his vision, right? And then kind of hang
Hmm.
out with the same guys and really, get this thing sounding the way that he wanted it to. And then really being committed to those same folks, you know, that whole thing is quite different than Sonny Stitt. Both of them are great. They're totally different. Um, one of them recorded more, but the other one's recordings are far more significant.
It's interesting because in this whole phase thing that I've been describing, there is the inevitable decline aspect, right? And it seems like the two people you've described have handled this in different way. The first guy, okay, uh, was that's not Coltrane, right? So Coltrane had a
Sonny
band,
Stitt.
right? Sonny Stitt. Okay, so Sonny Stitt, more or less, if I were to kind of just say, he kind of just went through only using barbarians. He was just like, okay, I'm gonna
Yep.
keep
Yep. He
I'm
was a
not
Viking.
gonna get. Yeah, exactly. I'm never gonna get into the problem where I'm gonna need to bring people in whom are civilized, okay, and have to keep them and blah blah blah. It's like I'm just gonna go from place to place, work with barbarians, work with fresh blood, and therefore there's no question of vision and motivation. Everyone's gonna be motivated all the time because everyone's a freaking barbarian. And then the other guy mastered the art of keeping a team together, okay, a core team. Now, Dr. Thunder, let's go ahead and give a shout out to another super chat. Okay. Gentleman
Yeah.
came through with $5. Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you,
He
thank you
says,
very much.
great topic. Thank you very much. Now,
Perno, is
see,
that the way you say
now, see,
that?
all I'm saying is, we appreciate the super chats for sure, but you know, you're going to reduce us to having to ask for it. I got to make you feel bad for giving. So you gave, now I make you feel bad for not having done it before I asked for it. So it's like you can't win no matter what.
Like
So
a
anyhow,
like a real pastor, you are.
that's right. That's right. Oh my goodness. Praise the Lord.
So, is it possible to avoid the decline? Okay, and what are some of the ways in which you might avoid the decline? Um, you said that you bring people in and you want to make sure what, okay, because it's the once you start getting to that employee 100, the civilized people, they're the ones that start to expect without necessarily
Yep.
understanding what it takes to build. And then the other end of the thing. You start with a barbarian and then you go up, and then the other end is the aristocrat. Now, aristocrat here used in a negative light. I don't like when aristocrat is used negatively, but okay. Meaning Genghis Khan's, great grandson, and he doesn't have any barbarian spirit in him. He's just an aristocrat now. Okay. And he walks with his flowing silk robes, and he's just like, well, I expect things to happen. Okay. Not knowing that this was all kind of crazy blood and guts and years in the wilderness for you to be at this position. And it takes a completely different kind of person. Now, how do you not prevent, how do you prolong, okay, your level on top before you slip down into the educated people, the civilized people completely taking over? It now becomes bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is another, it's almost the opposite of what of the barbarian. Okay. You have the barbarian working 16-hour days. What is a weekend? What is a this? What is it? I don't know. What are you talking about? There is no, I just do stuff. Right. And then on the other hand, you have the bureaucrats whom is like, well, you need to check this box. Oh no, we only deliver on 5 days, no sooner. That kind of stuff. How does one keep this vision going such that you don't slip into pure bureaucracy, into decline, and then aristocrats just completely ruin everything and snort all the money away in cocaine or whatever?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not sure that there really is a solution for that. I think if you yourself, if you want to insulate yourself from having to be part of that, then I think what you have to do is you have to start something, get it to a certain point, and then appoint someone, and then go and start something else. Um, because I think that you know, human nature is what it is. Um, there's a reason. Uh, you know, say for instance, I, I think about like Floyd Mayweather's kids. They are not made from the same stuff Floyd Mayweather's made out of. They're just not, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That's like a positive thing. I'm just saying that you can't expect his kids to be, you know, you can't expect them to be him. It's very unusual that a father and son, uh, become the same level of boxers, for instance. That's not usually, and besides the fact that the father probably didn't want the son to box because they were, it was like, this sucked. I want you to have a cushy thing. I want your living to come more comfortably. I want you to have less risk associated with, you being able to pay your bills and take care of your family. I want you to be able to sleep more, at night, you know, that whole thing. And, and then, the going to school and getting advanced degrees as a way to hopefully produce that, and for your kids' degrees so that they don't have to do X, Y, and Z, setting up a trust fund, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, and it's like, okay, it's good that you're doing that, but you do know that what that means is that your kid is never going to be, it's never going to be you.
Yes, and by the way, the barbarian type is more born than made. Okay, and that's why it's always only going to be a certain percentage of the population anyways. So you can't force your kids to be barbarians. You can't force
Right.
them to be like, you got to do it the way I did it, right?
Yeah, but you can,
So yeah.
but you can set things up in such a way that makes it very unlikely that they would ever want to be a barbarian.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you could definitely
What is
you could
the reason?
definitely
It's like, what is the
mess it up
reason?
that way.
Yeah. What is the reason for being a barbarian exactly? So, what does this entail exactly? How many hours a day am I supposed to be working?
When we put it in terms of a company, okay, in an organization,
Yeah.
basically what we're now saying that needs to be done is so that you don't completely mess up the barbarian spirit. You want to give people certain kinds of autonomy. Now it sounds like a LinkedIn article, right? But
Yeah. Okay. I see.
so if you give people a certain amount of autonomy, which means that you have to select them properly, okay? Because you're not just going to, again, the whole time, the work in the beginning of whom you bring into your team, which is we started from last week. We said, hey, don't play with those who will not work with you, okay? Before you go partying with people, think, will they wake up with me tomorrow and do my work for me? Okay, it's not because the answer is going to be yes, that's the deciding thing, but it's going to give you pause. It's going to make you think about the kinds of people you make sacrifices of your time and attention with. Okay, giving the wrong people your attention. Okay, this is the manosphere after all, right? So we all
Mhm.
know how that whole thing goes. So the a priori work, the work you got to do up front, the people you got to bring in. Now we're in this part where you're not bringing in the educated folks, your non-barbarians and whatnot. You select them so that you can give them autonomy. Okay, you can select a whole bunch of, you can hire a whole bunch of salespeople in this particular kind of company. Make sure that they're a particular personality. The whole personality testing has been a through line in this whole conversation, such that if you give these people autonomy, you can leave them alone and they will produce the outcomes. Hence, being in a situation whereby people are performance based, more performance based, rather than just I put in this amount of hours, I write in this thing in my timesheet, and then I get paid, right? Rather than having that, you want to go in the other direction of here is the goal, here is the target. Okay, here's what we have to do, and this is what you're going to, this is your remuneration, this is your reward, this is your bonus, this is how you're going to get paid for it. This way, there's a little bit of barbarian still in the waters. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, and that I mean that's kind of, I didn't go into as much detail. I didn't blather on so long. But but that's kind of what I started out by saying, you appoint someone, and by appointing them you're giving them the authority, and then you go do something else, because then you're not sort of micromanaging what's going on, and maybe that way you can kind of keep that thing going for longer.
Yes, yes, yes. Uh, Now, the next thing we're going to get into, but that I think we're going to table it for the next conversation. The
Sure.
next aspect has to do with rules. Okay. Because again, we started this thing with a simple thing. Why is it the case that nobody likes group projects? Okay. We're like, oh, there's all kinds of problems associated with. Dr. Thunder said, hey, because there's people are not equal, And we said, okay, it's true. And then I mentioned that even beyond the hierarchical inequality in terms of different levels of competency, that you can have people whom are just as competent, just as driven, but the communication needs to be different, such that K Polymath working on something is different from Dr. Thunder working on something. It's just you're gonna get different outcomes. So you have to specify what you want so that the communication can happen. Next, we went into the whole motivation thing, and that's where we stayed the longest because in order to keep people in it, have a common vision, okay, have a common drive, have a kind of common think patriotism, even right, being invested in, having skin in the game is needed for people to be able to work together as a team. And how does one do that? We know it doesn't just happen automatically. Okay. So we mentioned a few things about it. And then we started talking about, well, let's look at the phase of the endeavor. In the beginning, in the start, in the entrepreneurial phase, in the phase of breaking ground, and this is a new idea, you're going to need to just recruit other people whom are like you in terms of barbarian types. Barbarians and visionaries are the ones that are doing this stuff together. And Dr. Thunder immediately pointed out that they're going to disperse. Okay. Elon Musk and Peter Thiel didn't stay together. Neither did the rest of the PayPal mafia. They indeed went afterwards, founded many other billion-dollar companies. Okay. Because they're barbarians like that. They're not going to stick together. But in the beginning phase, that's what you need. Okay. And then as things go further, you're going to need employee number one who's going to build systems for you. That first salesman, okay, that first accountant, that first whatever is the kind of person whom doesn't need the flashy logo and all those kinds of things, but they can see. They have some visionary aspects or some barbarian aspects, or maybe they don't have maybe they have a family and they don't necessarily want to do the crazy kinds of risks that you want to do, right? And then you move on to the part now where employee number 100, and this is when the danger starts because you're now in the risk of slipping down into bureaucracy, slipping down into taking all the blood, all the piss and vinegar out of the spirit, okay, killing the complete barbarian spirit. Hence, at this phase, you need to keep on talking about the founding fathers, okay, and whether it's George Washington or Steve Jobs. You need to do the rah rah thing. Okay. If you're a
Mhm.
barbarian, you're like, why do I need this? And this is another thing that you see barbarians don't tend to understand. Barbarians are like, someone like Dr. Thunder would be like, oh, not another freaking. Why do I need to do the national anthem? Why do I need to sit there and listen to this speech about the da da da? Okay. Because you're a barbarian. Okay. But
Yeah.
trust me, majority of people need that. Otherwise, they're not going to be motivated. They're not going to be with the program and all that kind of stuff. So that's where we're at. But then when we go forward, we're going to see that there needs to be a set of rules and regulations that guide us. And also that there's no one can be above the law. So in that simple group project, you need to set deadlines. You need to have bylaws. Okay, maybe not as formal, but it needs to be very clear expectations as to whom does what are the fiefdoms, okay, what by fiefdoms I just mean who's responsible for what, who has the particular vertical, who has the particular responsibility, accountability, rules, laws, and that as a leader, most especially, you cannot remove yourself from being subject to the law insofar as you want other people to follow it, right? So next time we'll get into that.
Hey,
And
I
go ahead.
wanted to shout out that Mumia Obsidian Ali is in the chat,
Oh, yeah.
and I that's why I put my book up here. I got my copy. I've had it for a while now, but it's my autographed copy.
Indeed,
Yeah,
indeed, indeed. The Book of Obsidian.
yeah. Shout
And
out to him.
Obsidian, I got your email, by the way. I will respond. I will respond to you. But still in Africa, still 10,000 things going on. And don't worry about it. I'll be in touch. I will be in touch. Um, Mr. Leroy asking a question. It might be so here's the thing. Engineering skills. First of all, you got to choose to be an engineer, right? So you're already a certain type of person. Okay. So it's not necessarily engineering skills. Okay, now I'm confusing. I always do this stuff. Okay.
Come on, more
Let's
visionary, more visionary, and less scholarly. Okay.
just answer the damn question, Ike. It's like, oh, but on the one. Anyways, so problem solving is what you are paid for as an engineer. Okay, it is to solve a problem. Hey, architect comes. We need to build this kind of a thing. Mechanical engineer, who's another person, comes to me, the structural engineer. I need to build this process plant, and over here there's this tank with this much pressure and these pipes and this blah 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 blah. I need to make it work in the physical world according to the constraints of the use, whether it be for petroleum processing or to make a nice fancy hall with this nice little dome ceiling and other stuff. Okay, there are restrictions on me, the laws of physics, and the use that the people want to put it to. Hence, I have to be able to think fundamentally about things and constantly, like, not, in other words, I always think it is solvable or soluble, whatever it is. Okay. And that thing has helped me in many, many, many respects. Okay. In the sense that when a problem comes at me, I don't immediately start thinking no. I don't immediately start thinking yes either. Because from experience, I just know that take a step back, okay? Think about it a little bit, shift a few things around, here are some ideas, and then you start piecing it together.
Yeah.
That's in a broad sense how I use my engineering skills. On a day-to-day level, it's solving the hard problems that my employees cannot solve because as that barbarian, one thing is you're gonna have seen the most. And this is one thing about experience. It's not just that you know the most, it's just because maybe there's a particular kind of, it could be something little too. There's this particular kind of French door, okay, that gets installed in some kind of a strange way. And you saw it once in 1990, and no one has seen it since then. Okay. And then you are the only one that knows how to kind of do the architectural engineering around that. And then you go ahead and you solve that kind of a problem. But basically, problem solving skills is basically what engineering is all about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't distill it down to the most essential thing and say being.
Get the hell out of here.
Being. How do you
Anyways,
use your engineering skills? Being.
well, because I was gonna go there. Okay, I was gonna go there when I was talking about the fact that I chose it and then blah blah blah. And the whole thing that I do with the feeling image talk thing, whereby I look at my subjective consciousness as a vehicle that I'm driving and it has a dashboard. That is a very kind of engineer way of looking at the
Mhm.
world, which is there is something I'm looking at. What does my controller pad look like, and what does the dashboard that I have for my subjective consciousness look like? Hence, how do I experience the world? It's feelings in the body, image in the head, and talk in the head. How do I master those things such that I can get the outcomes that I want? I cannot completely control them. I said master them. In other words, you try to master the waves in the water, you're not going to control it. That kind of a BS. But now, Dr. Thunder, you got me off track. I'll give you the last word, Dr. Thunder, and then we will be back next week for continuation of this episode on how to work together as a team, where we will start with the whole concept of the rules and the laws and what have you. But I'll give you the last word, sir.
So I have a couple pretty cool things happening. Solo TV 84, Solomon Jones will be sitting down with me again on my conversations with Dr. Thunder interview series. I just interviewed Vanessa Campagna, who had a #1 Billboard on Billboard with Michael W. Smith, song called Waymaker. It's a remake of that song. Actually, the song was written by an artist called Senok, which is actually a Nigerian woman. Shout out to Nigeria. And so anyhow, that was a really great interview that premiered this morning, and so of course it's still out there. So go and check that out. It was a really great conversation, and she's very pleasant and warm and friendly and all of those kind of things. So that was very cool. I've got an interview with Solo TV 84. That interview will likely premiere on my YouTube channel at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday. That's this coming Thursday. So that'll be the 6th. And then also in the evening on the 6th, I have a pretty spicy episode of Thunder's Thoughts. And you see the title there behind me. Here's how to destroy the Black community in 3 easy steps. So it's going to be quite spicy, getting into all kinds of issues that our community faces. And that'll be with Dr. Doug, and it's going to feature a video review of a Please Act Right video. So it's going to be pretty cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much what's going on. We've got an episode of Case Closed coming up this coming Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Keep your ear to the ground as far as whose channel it's going to be on. I think it's going to be on Solo's channel. And then we have another episode of Getting Ish Done this coming Tuesday, next week Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you check that out. My Thunder's Thoughts episode, here's how to destroy the Black community in 3 easy steps. That will be 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursday. That's this coming Thursday, the 6th. So come check that out. That's going to be very cool. I always have a good pre-show, which features some of my live performance, and then we get right into it. It's going to be very, very interesting show.
Excellent. All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we are gone. Till next time. Peace.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with the shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising and hearts are compromising, convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest and the righteous in your corners.